the F1 Focus Podcast with MW Welman and Hendrik Verwoerd.
Welcome back to Formula One Focus. My friend Hendrik Verwoerd is back after we missed out last week due to a variety of circumstances. But Hendrik, today is an important day, a red letter day in the history of Formula One.
Yes, absolutely. Nice to be back. Glad to see everything is up and running. Today, the 75th anniversary of the start of the Formula One World Championship. Today, as we record on the 13th of May, in 1950, the very first World Championship event took place at Silverstone. It was initially known as the European Grand Prix, but very quickly it turned into the British Grand Prix. And of course, it was the start of what we know today as Formula One. Before that, of course, there were a number of what the so-called Grand Prix races, but they were not grouped together as a World Championship, where drivers would score points in each event and then the total at the end would be the World Champions would then be crowned at the end of the season. And of course, 8 years later, we would have the start of the Constructors' Championship. So for the first 7 years of Formula One, we only had a Drivers' Championship. The interesting thing is I do have the results of that day. And it's quite interesting reading if you listen to the names and the constructors involved. And I think contrary to popular belief, Ferrari was not involved in that very first race. They only took part from, I think, the second race onwards. What is true, of course, is that Ferrari is the only team that has been competing in the World Championship ever since that first season, but not that very first race. The top names there were, of course, Alfa Romeo and Maserati, the Italian teams, and they were quite dominant in that race as well. Alfa Romeo came there with 4 drivers, and in no particular order: Juan Manuel Fangio, Luigi Fagioli, Giuseppe Farina or Nino Farina, the 3 Fs, and then they also had a British driver, a guy called Reg Parnell in there. And for that very first race, we had 22 entries and only 21 of them started in the end. And we had 11 finishes after 70 laps of what used to be a World War II aerodrome for the British Air Force. It wasn't known as the British Air Force then, I think. Was it the RAF, the Royal Air Force? So it used to be an airfield for them. They just basically added, the runways together with some oil drums and some bales of hay bales, and there we had a racetrack to start the World Championship. 70 laps of that. It took them 2 hours and 13 minutes, 23 seconds. To complete that. The first winner, of course, for those that know the history, is Nino Farina for Alfa Romeo. Alfa Romeo had the top 3 there, but unfortunately for them, it wasn't the 3 Fs that finished 1, 2, 3. It was Farina, then Fagioli, and Parnell finished in third because after 62 laps, Juan Manuel Fangio had an oil leak, and he had to retire on lap 62 out of 70. So interesting names there. The first 3 then, as I said, Farina, Fagioli, and Parnell. And then the other strong team from Italy was Maserati, but they didn't do all that well, and not very well-known names driving for them either. David Hampshire was 9th in the top-running Maserati there. Joe Fry and his teammate Brian Shaw Taylor finished in 10th position in the top 2 Maseratis. Outside of them, we had the Talbots, the French team, or the French drivers, Yves Agüero Cabantu, I think. I don't know. Louis Rossier in the 2 Talbots finished 4th and 5th. And then the British team ERA had 2 drivers in 6th and 7th, Bob Gerard and Cuth Harrison. But they were 3 laps behind. Only the top 3 finished on the lead lap. They finished 70 laps. The 4th man in the Talbot Lago, he finished on 68 laps. So the interesting thing is that the average speed for Farina, who won that race, the average speed was 146.378 kilometers an hour. I mean, that's touching on 150 k's an hour average. So that's hauling it. I tell you what, that is hauling it. And it was a battle between basically the 2 of them, or the 3 of them, while Fangio was still there. Farina led 63 of the 70 laps, but they often changed the order as during the course of laps. Fagioli led 6 of those, and Fangio led 1 of the laps. But it was really a demonstration run by the Alfa Romeo team. Let's just see, they finished 2 minutes 2 minutes. Yeah, the top three, the three Alfa Romeos, 2 minutes apart, and then 2 laps further back the rest of the field. So you can imagine what that was. 150,000 people attended that. Beautiful, sunny, warm sort of spring day for them in England on that day, the 13th of May. And the King and Queen were there as well. They met all the drivers. So that's where the whole thing started. The drivers sort of meeting, the VIPs before the start of the race. So it certainly would have been something to be at if you knew what was coming. Many of the drivers said afterwards that they didn't even realize what was happening, that this was so significant a day in the history of the sport. Nobody, of course, expected it to turn out the way it is today. Yeah, well, that's the start of Formula One as we know it today. Basically, the rules were for single seater, open cockpit, single seaters, either 4.5 liter unsupercharged engines or 1.5 liter supercharged engines. Most of them were unsupercharged, if not all of them, but those were what the regulations allowed. So just a little bit of a snippet out of the history of Formula One.
Well, you said it's the start of a very famous story after that. So after that trip down memory lane, let's get back to what happened this past week. We've been talking about the do and def watch since the beginning of the year, and then 1 week we didn't manage to record. The axe dropped, and he was summarily demoted, and Colapinto, as expected, was appointed in his place. But interestingly enough, only for 5 races. What's the story behind that?
I think it's a cop-out. It's a question of, they were trying to avoid the kind of criticism that was leveled at Red Bull earlier in the season when they got rid of Liam Lawson after only 2 races. So basically, I think what they're saying now is, we've had 6 races of Jack Doohan. Now we're going to have 5 races of Colapinto, and after that we will make our decision. But, I think it's probably a good guess to say that is not going to change again for the rest of the season. Poor old Jack, if you look at his results, they certainly do not, light up the skies. But there are many, many things that did go wrong that were out of his control. One should not always just look at the results. Things like the pit lane incident, where was it, the previous race, that made that he couldn't qualify, stuff like that happened. Some other, he did have the bad accident, his fault, as he admitted in Japan, of course, when he forgot to close the DRS down the main straight, or he didn't forget, he was just never told that he should do it. Again, was that his fault or wasn't it? I would argue it wasn't his fault. Because, if you do the race in the simulator and nobody tells you that you should manually close the DRS at the end of the main straight, why would you do it in the race or in qualifying or in practice, whenever? So, that kind of thing. So I think it was a harsh decision. I don't think it was unexpected. We have on many occasions we spoke about the threat hanging over him. And of course, it's all because of Flavio Briatore in the background. He was quite clear from the beginning of the season, Briatore. He, of course, is the man who actually pulls the strings in that team. That he doesn't really favor Jack Doohan, that he would like to see Colapinto. That's why he signed him towards the end of last year. Was it earlier this year? Was it earlier this year, I think?
End of last year.
The end of last year, after his stellar performances, some stellar performances at Williams, Colapinto. So it's always been on the cards, and unfortunately it happened. So what was not foreseen, of course, in the whole brouhaha that happened last week when we were supposed to talk about it, was that the team principal, Oliver Oakes, all of a sudden, just out of the blue, just resigned with immediate effect and simply disappeared. There are reports that he went straight to Dubai from Miami. But there was no indication that was going to happen. And all the speculation is, of course, that this was the Tuesday evening before the Wednesday when the announcement, the morning of the Wednesday when the announcement of the Colapinto do and swap was made. So everybody jumped to the conclusion. I think it's not an unfair conclusion, although I don't think that there are any concrete indications of that he decided that and of course, he was a pro Jack Doohan man from the beginning. He was looking after him. He was supporting him, and he was protecting him in the media. So Oliver Oakes, the speculation runs, resigned immediately because he was unhappy with the decision that was to be made or was to be announced the next morning. Again, we don't know. It did emerge after that the previous weekend, the Friday of the previous weekend, his brother, who is the co-owner along with him, or a co-director with him, in the high-tech Formula 2 team, was arrested for carrying illegal amounts of cash. Was arrested and appeared in court over that weekend. And there are a lot of people who are jumping to the conclusion that those two are related, or those two incidents are related. I cannot see any way in which they are, or that there's any indication that Oliver Oakes is involved in anything as shady as that. So, the two might be just coincidence. It might not, but there's nothing to the contrary that we know at this point.
The interesting thing is that we've been speculating that High-Tech was going to be taking over the Alpine team eventually, because they were one of the unsuccessful applicants, one of the very close unsuccessful. They became very close to being allowed to enter Formula One, and this resignation came as a bit of a surprise. What I wanted to talk to you about is the fact that now with this Colapinto and Doohan and everybody up and down, strong rumors that Sergio Perez might be on the way back into Formula One. Specifically, Cadillac seems to be the hot favorite, but also strong indications that he might be in the running to come to Alpine. Wonder what's going to happen there if Colapinto, Doohan, and then Perez comes into the thing. That's an interesting development.
Yeah, I can't see him going to Alpine. I can see him going to Cadillac. In fact, it's one of the predictions I made at the beginning of the season, that they're going to announce him as one of their drivers. There are strong indications that he is, one of the front-running candidates for that seat at Cadillac. No announcements have been made in this regard. Apparently, there's a short list of 3 drivers, and apparently he is one of them. So I would not be surprised if that happens. It will be a good decision because of the Mexican connection and because of the funding that he can bring to the team. And of course, he's a proven race winner. I mean, Sergio Perez is no slouch. He's a legitimate Formula One driver. So it would be good to have him back again. But we'll have to wait and see for that to happen. I can't see are they going to replace Pierre Gasly with him? I can't see that happening. Are they going to replace Colapinto with him if Colapinto doesn't perform? Man, I tell you what, that team is in such turmoil. I wouldn't be surprised if that happens, although I think that's a very long shot. One never knows what Flavio Briatore's got in mind. He's now going to be the de facto team principal until they found somebody else. I can't see them finding anybody else who would like to, sully their career or their career prospects by going to Alpine as the new team principal with all the goings on there. Flavio Briatore is now apparently, and I haven't done the counting, but somebody has reported this, he's now the 6th team principal at that team since 2021 in 4 years.
Yeah.
So that team is not in a good place behind the scenes, and I think it's probably the reason why sometimes it doesn't show well up on the track as well. There is a vague connection involving Oliver Oakes that he might be in the running as a replacement team principal for Christian Horner at Red Bull. That's so one of the pieces of speculation that's been doing the rounds, that he could be in the running because that the thinking goes, and this is not my thinking, but the thinking goes that Christian Horner is still not being favored by the Thai side of the Red Bull ownership, and that's the 51% ownership of the overall Red Bull company, not the Formula One team. Is still Thai held, and the 49% is basically Austrian held, the Matisic camp, so to speak. And the saying is that, or the thinking is, or the argument is at the moment, that Horner has now lost the support of the Austrian side. So who knows if that's true, and if he, and apparently that is because of the performance of the team so far. I think if that's a reason, then they're looking for reasons to get rid of him. It's probably got to do, if there's any truth to it, it's probably got to do with the upheaval that was caused by the rumours last year involving Christian Horner. I'm a little bit circumspect to believe that is something. I don't think, these are reports in newspapers that are a little bit shady in terms of their reputations. So I would be very, very reluctant
No.
to get too much weight to that. I mean, Christian Horner and the team are going to you know, have a big party this weekend because it's their 400th race together. So Red Bull came in, and of course, Christian Horner has been there since right from the beginning in 2005. So, you know, they're going to celebrate this weekend. Why would they have a big celebration if something is cooking underneath or bubbling down underneath the surface? I don't know. Funnier things have happened, stranger things, let's say. Stranger things have happened in Formula One. So one should never, of course, say never. But it is very, very, it's very dicey at the moment, these rumors.
Someone is trying to create a narrative. It's clear. I mean, there's not much to it. The people that are supposedly in the running to replace him is going to be, like you said, Oliver Oakes, or even Franz Tost or whatever, who might be coming out of retirement. I mean, that's just too far-fetched to be any truth to it. And as far as I know, Christian Horner is a shareholder in the racing team as well.
The director of not only the Formula One team, but also, you know, the powertrains company and the high or the what they call Red Bull high technology company. So, you know, they could. I mean, again, there are no grounds for this, but they could move him sideways if they do need to find him, you know, somewhere else. But I still don't. I can't see any grounds at this point to get rid of him.
You're not going to get rid of him after 20 years of success and 5 races that it didn't go that well. It's not that simple. No, it's never going to happen. I don't think so.
At the end of an era, at the beginning of a new era next year, no, it doesn't work. It doesn't make sense at all.
Talking about those Alpine team principals, another name that's been in the news lately is Otmar Szafnauer.
Yes.
He's now floating the idea of him starting bringing into Formula One a 12 team, apparently. He's doing his homework and everything else. And he's been doing the rounds, doing the talk shows and podcasts and everything else. Yep. What do you think about that new angle?
Well, you know, they theoretically, there are still 2 places left on the grid. You know, according to basically the regulations, there can be 12 teams and possibly even 13 teams, because in the past we had 26 runners. But I can't see there being a 13th team simply because most of the facilities at most of the tracks would not have enough space for 13 teams. But I can see the possibility of a 12th team. There are many reasons why Formula One should try and get a 12th team, and most of those reasons involve money. You know, if you can get another team on the grid, you've got another possible channel for additional sponsorship, and you can up your hosting fee because now you've got 12 teams and not 11 like we're going to have from next year onwards. And certainly, you know, Szafnauer has the credentials. He's got the experience. You know, he comes from way back when BAR, I think, was where he started. And he's been a team principal. We know he's one of those that were fired at Alpine last year. Year before. Time flies, eh? So it's not impossible, and as you say, he's doing the rounds. He's making the pitch. He's creating the expectation. He's sowing the seeds, as they say. I think Mohammed bin Sulayem has some other things, you know, more important and urgent things on his mind. But who knows, if he gets re-elected by the end of this year in December, when the presidential election happens, it could well be that he opens up, you know, a bidding process again for a 12th team next year. Who knows? It's quite possible, and there's nothing wrong with positioning yourself early to get, you know, to get in the strongest possible position, and that is what Szafnauer is doing at the moment, quite obviously. So I would applaud that.
You very neatly brought up the subject of Mohammed bin Sulayem. He's been sort of, you know, seen to be a lot of upheaval, but no serious candidate to oppose him. That's now changed. Carlos Sainz Sr. has apparently thrown his hat into the ring. That could be a bit of a cat amongst pigeons.
Yeah, and another rally driver, of course, Carlos Sainz, 2 times World Rally champion, multiple Dakar winning champion. And that's a kind of environment where bin Sulayem has been competitive in as a competitor, has been taking part in as a competitor. So they come from sort of the same background. I believe they do have a relatively good personal relationship because of that, or thanks to that. But now, apparently, the dissatisfaction in the ranks, and this is not just in Formula One, it includes the rallying fraternity because of, the swearing thing. Let's call it the swearing thing. People in that category are also unhappy with Ben Solia. Let's not forget, he's the president of the FIA that oversees the World Rally Championship, amongst other things, the Formula One and the World Endurance Championship, many others as well. I think something like 14 or 15 various championships are overseen by the FIA, and he's the president. So what he says goes for everybody, not just for Formula One. Apparently there are some elements that are very supportive of Carlos Sainz Sr. He says that he's been approached by a number of people that asked whether he would be interested, and he's now testing the waters. He says he would be interested if there is enough support for it. Obviously, that's what that's what any politician should say. But let's not forget, of course, that the FIA president is not being elected by individuals from the different championships. The FIA president is elected by the members, the member clubs, the country associations, such as the AA in South Africa. And let's not forget, of course, that the FIA is not just about sport, motorsport. It's also about mobility. It's about road safety. It's about, wearing crash helmets when you cycle and stuff like that. So, that tends in our environment, we tend to not give a lot of attention to that, but that is a large part. Road safety is a large part of what the FIA is involved with worldwide. Jean Todt, his predecessor, was very much involved with that. He became a United Nations ambassador for road safety, and he's had many initiatives that's got nothing to do with racing at all. I haven't seen much of that in Ben Sulian's past 3 years. So I don't know whether he's if somebody does replace him, if that person would be able to do more on that side. But for us who are involved and more interested in the sporting side, and specifically the Formula One side, it would be very interesting to see if Carlos Sainz Sr. actually declares his candidacy. Of course, he would have to make sure that there's no conflict of interest with his son still competing in Formula One. He did say that he's going to make sure that there will be no conflict of interest. And the man strikes me, I cannot claim to know him, but from everything that I've seen in documentaries about him and his family, and he seems to be a man of great integrity and honesty. Absolutely no question about his background or anything that lies in his history. So from what I can see, I think he will be, and he's got the gravitas also, I think. He's got that sort of, he's got that authority around him. I suppose that every world champion has in whatever field, but he's got that gravitas. He's old enough. He's just as old as Ben Sulian. He's 62, so he can do the 4-year term. He can do the 8-year term. In fact, the limit is 70. You can't carry on beyond the year of 70. So if he does get elected, he can do 8 years, 2 4-year terms. And I do think that, from what I can see of Carlos Sainz Sr., he's got the grasp of the bigger picture. And I think he's able to see the bigger picture from he can see the wood from the tree, so to speak.
Yeah.
Those are my thoughts. I think it would be great. I think it's unhealthy to have a situation where there's a lot of competitors in the sport there's a lot of competitors, not all of them, but many competitors seem to be very unhappy with the president of the motorsport governing body, and that's not a healthy situation, because you need the regulator and the competitors to be more or less on the same page, I would think.
Yeah. No, he seems to be consolidating power, doing lots of things, lots of resignations and stuff. But that's a story for another day. Let's get back to the sporting side, like you eloquently put it. At Red Bull, Liam Lawson apparently is now maybe in danger of even losing his Racing Bull seat if he doesn't pull up his socks quite quickly. He seems to not have taken that emotion in his stride, and is really struggling at Racing Bulls as well. Your thoughts?
I would just say, repeat what I said in the past. It's not easy to get from one team into another team. And a guy like Lawson, I'm pretty sure that he would have taken quite a knock emotionally because of the whole situation. And it wouldn't have been easy for him to get back, even into the team that he did so well in last year as a stand-in. That car has evolutionized since then. And as I've said on many occasions here, these cars are so on the limit, absolutely on the limit in terms of their performance, and things like the tire operating windows and stuff like that, and the setups and the ride heights and everything involved with that you can easily get things wrong, or it will take a while for you to get used to it. We have had the examples of most prominently Lewis Hamilton and also Carlos Sainz Jr. Moving to a different team and struggling to get used to it. There was an interesting snippet from Sainz Jr. Last week where he explained that anything from 15 to 20 different parameters that you have to get used to when you move from one team to another. And this is just sitting in the cockpit and driving the car. It's got nothing to do with getting used to the people that you're working with or their working practices. Or even the culture in the team. This is driving the car. 15 to 20 different things that you have to get used to in a car if you move from one team to another. Maybe it wasn't quite as large a jump for Liam Lawson, and yeah, I think he's been a little bit unlucky also sometimes this year, but he does seem to be struggling. Are they going to replace him with somebody else? I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that. I just want to quickly have a look here. Who are they? They've got Ayumu Iwasa, Japanese driver, as a reserve. I'm not sure that he's going to be. I would be surprised. I wouldn't. Let's put it this way. I wouldn't be surprised, but I don't think it's going to happen. It would just be, it just cause so much upheaval in that team as well. So, yeah, rumors. There are always rumors in Formula One. That's what the sport is built on.
We talked about a couple of things now. Number one, team principal supposedly are being under pressure, and secondly, drivers struggling. So that means we have to talk about Ferrari. Suddenly, Fred Vassier's honeymoon seems to be over. Rumors starting to circulate that he's under pressure because the Ferrari is underperforming, the rear suspension specifically causing a lot of problems. Lewis Hamilton unfollowing everybody on Instagram again, like he did just after he lost the 2021 World Championship to Max Verstappen. So lots of rumors going around that Lewis is not happy with what's happening at Ferrari, and Ferrari can't do anything about it. They can't lower the ride height to make the car more competitive because then they have the skid plate problems that led to their disqualification in China. Ferrari seems to be a team in turmoil, and I would have thought under Fred Vassier's capable leadership, it would have settled down by now, but it doesn't seem to be the case. That car is not performing as it should be.
Yeah, well, I mean, the worst thing that they can do, Ferrari, is to get rid of their team principal. Martin Brundle has said it. You can't treat a Formula One team like a soccer team. You can't just, if the results are not there, just fire the coach. A Formula One team doesn't work that way. So the biggest mistake they will make, and they've got a history of doing this, unfortunately, Ferrari. So I hope that they're not going to, find a reason to get rid of Fred Vasseur. I have no idea who they're going to try and replace him with. It will be one of the technical guys, obviously. But I wouldn't put too much on that rumor that they're going to replace him. Yes, I think there is unhappiness inside the team. I think Lewis is certainly unhappy. He's shown it, and he's also said it. But what to me is much more concerning is the discrepancy between what Vasseur has been saying about the current car and what somebody like Charles Leclerc has said about the current car. And Leclerc, of course, is in a good position to be able to judge what this current car is capable of, unlike Lewis. And what Vasseur has said so far this season is, the car's got potential. All we need to do is just, achieve the potential that the car has got. Leclerc has said after Miami, no, we are getting the maximum out of the car at the moment. There is no more potential that we can get out of the car. And that to me is much more concerning. So that to me is there's a bit of a disconnect between what they've been saying in public. I'm not sure what they will say behind closed doors, but if that is what they are saying in public, then there certainly is some kind of a design problem in the SF25. They are bringing an upgrade to the car for this weekend's Imola race, the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix. So, all they can do, and you talked about the ride height situation, all they can do basically is find an aerodynamic solution for that in order to be able to run the car as low as they can without jeopardizing its legality. They have to find an aerodynamic solution for that. Having said that, there are 2 races more to go before the big readjustment happens in Spain, when the FIA will have a much stricter clampdown on things like flexible front and rear wings. We don't know to what degree that is going to affect a team like Ferrari. I did see somewhere that somebody at Ferrari, I'm not sure whether it was Vasseur or one of the drivers, saying that after Spain they should be in a better position. And I can only then surmise that it's got to do with the aerodynamic configuration of the car, or the wings, the flexibility of the wings or not. So that could be a factor that Ferrari is maybe just waiting for. Let's just wait for the adjustment coming in Spain. Let's just deal with what we have at the moment and get the best out of it that we can. I'm speculating, but I think that's probably what's going on at Ferrari at the moment.
Oh, that brings us again neatly to the subject of McLaren. The clear leaders, runaway leaders, when they've won all the races bar one this season so far. Their brakes have been inspected after Miami, been officially declared legal, but nothing came out that it wasn't going to be legal. So you can safely assume that there's no problem with it. We'll talk about that just now. You've got an interesting couple of things to say about that, but McLaren specifically teams must be hoping that McLaren will be affected by that clampdown in Spain, because they are so far ahead. And Jonathan Wheatley, the new team principal of Sauber, that's originally from Red Bull, said he expects a significant change in the pecking order. Do you think, we don't know, but we're all speculating, but do you honestly think McLaren will be caught out by that, or how does that work?
They've been consistently saying that they are not concerned because their advantage doesn't lie with the aerodynamics or with the flexibility of their front or rear wings. Well, we've seen one or two changes in their rear wings over the past few months, but they are saying this is not where our advantage lies. So therefore, if they do change, we will not lose our advantage. We will have to wait and see. Well, what clearly is the advantage that the McLaren has. And everybody, including myself, and us probably, all expected that it is an aerodynamic advantage, the way in which they manage the airflow over and underneath the car and through things like the front wheels and the rear wheels in order to manage the tire temperatures. Because clearly the McLaren is able to maintain the correct amount of heat in there, especially their rear tires, for a longer period of time than just about everybody else, including the other front runners. They are able to stay in that operating window, temperature window for specifically their rear tires for a longer time in the race. And we all expected that to be, and I think many people are still, ascribing that to the aerodynamic configuration and the way in which they manage airflow through, especially the rear brakes, as the air flows over the car and then around the rear axle and the rear wheels and into the brake housings. But now there's another theory, and I find this very interesting, and I'm not going to say that I'm going to ascribe to that, but I find it fascinating. I find it as a complete non-technical guy, as it seems very feasible. And the theory is that, and I'm not going to get too technical about it, there are a number of videos on YouTube that you can watch about this, but it's got to do with the material that they use in the housing of the brakes, the rear brakes, and the material that basically carries heat from the wheel, from the brakes through the wheel housing, then into the rim of the wheel, and then into the rubber of the tires. That's the direction that the heat travels. As you brake, you heat the brakes. Those brakes can go up to 1,000 degrees centigrade. That heat then gets distributed through the wheel into the tire. Now, the key apparently is, well, you've got to maintain the amount of heat that goes into the tire. And apparently they have some kind of a material that is able to control or regulate the amount of heat. Once it reaches a certain temperature, so goes the theory. I'm not saying it's a fact. So goes the theory. Once it reaches the calculated ideal level of heat, it can then maintain that heat. It doesn't then overheat, or it doesn't then cool down, like you would find in most cases. So that is the way goes the theory again, in which they can maintain the amount of heat in the rear tires and therefore maintain the performance that they get out of the tires for much longer than the other teams can. And this is not illegal. There is nothing illegal about this. It's got nothing to do. It's not got to do with using any fluid or anything, like water or whatever, to cool the brakes down or whatever. It's simply a question of using a material that has these kind of characteristics, that it maintains the heat for a specific, in a specific way. So I find that fascinating. I find that interesting. And to me, that is all about what Formula One is all about. Innovation, finding new ways of getting more performance, and all within the rules. Everything within the rules so far. So that I would imagine is going to be an area that other teams are going to investigate and possibly start using. Good luck to them, and well done to whoever found this one.
It's funny to me that it's certainly a more credible theory than the tire water that Zach Brown was so clearly drinking from. A clear jab at Red Bull there. That was quite interesting. I like that. All right, then this weekend, of course, is, like you said, the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix at Imola, probably the last one, looks like. The week after that, Monaco, and then the week after that, another triple header is Spain, where the whole new pecking order might change. Lots to look forward to, Hendrik. Thanks. We'll talk about that next week. So thanks for updating us. Enjoyed it.
Absolutely. Cheers. See you then.
The F1 Focus Podcast with MW Welman and Hendrik Verwoerd.